let's see, this is actually a joint Economic Development Committee meeting and Government Affairs Committee meeting, I believe. So Randy and I are holding hands virtually through this.
Probably with Toby too.
Toby is in the mix
and
as well.
Chamber.
Oh yeah, that's why I have so many people. Okay. In any case, welcome everybody. This is a special presentation by a HICC that I've been doing my best to keep up with, not contribute as much as I'd like to, but it's a really good group. Maria Leonardi is kind of the lead crafter of a initiative called Startup Hawaii that is all about entrepreneurship. And this is part of a process of getting the word out about what she's developing with our little HICC. Heather Kimball on the county council is part of our HICC as well, and has been reaching out to multiple chambers to find an opportunity to provide this kind of briefing and Q&A. So with that, Randy or Topi, you want to say anything in terms of an intro?
No, I just wanted to say thanks everybody for coming on board, and thank you, Maria, for sharing. We're really excited to hear more about what folks are doing.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys. Yep.
With that, Maria, we'll turn over to you. I think you have a presentation in mind to screen share. Okay, why don't you do that, then we'll do Q&A afterwards.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I figured since I'm a new face to most of you, I give you a little background on myself, why I'm doing this and why it's important to me. But I just wanted to say I appreciate so many people joining. I know you all have many things going on and are very busy, so I'm really excited to share this with you. I have a long connection to Hawaiʻi Island, but I actually only moved here a little over a year ago. And when I moved, it was really important to me to find a way to give back to the community. So I was really looking for ways that I could do it using my experience. So personally, I own my own business working with technology startups. I'm also the co-founder of a solar hardware company. And before that, I managed the operations for a startup accelerator for a Fortune 50 company. On the other side of my life, I'm also very passionate about geographic equity. And so rural and remote communities, particularly when we think about leveraging technology to enable these communities to participate on the global stage. And because at this point, there is no reason why residents of a community like ours should not be able to have the same kind of opportunities as someone living in a place like San Francisco. So that combination of my professional life and my personal passions led me to join Vibrant Hawai. And I joined the group about probably 9 months ago, and I joined the Technology Corp team about 6 months ago. And that's along with Doug and Heather. So everything I've really learned from that group and others in the community led me to create this vision. And it's an initiative that's become really important to me because I feel strongly that the time is right now. Our world is at a huge inflection point. We have the chance to take advantage of trends towards distributed workforces and the ability to work from anywhere, and to connect our residents with these opportunities locally, but globally, without people leaving our island. So Startup Hawaii is really meant to leverage this opportunity through creation of a technology startup community on this island. And so as we go through the slides, just think of this as a framework or a strategy to set ourselves up for success. Collectively working towards a common goal. This isn't a new thing that's meant to replace any initiative that's already underway, because I've learned there's quite a few things out there going on. It's meant to connect and fill some gaps and do what we can to make progress together towards a collective goal, because I think as an island, we have 200,000 people here. That's enough to create a successful startup community, as long as we're working together. So as I move into the deck now, just keep in mind that this isn't just a presentation to get you familiar with what's going on. Feedback is incredibly important. There are a lot of frameworks out there that are known to be successful in creating startup communities, but we're a completely different place, right? We have our own challenges, but also our own opportunities. So this is an iterative vision. So feedback is very important. You'll even notice in the link that was sent around, there are comments throughout the deck. So please feel free to go in and put your own ideas or feedback into that. You can share it here or you can email it to me, but just know that this is a work in progress. Okay, so I'll share this deck here. I assume that you can all see that. Okay. So Startup Hawaii, as you can see from the logo, is directed at our island, not all of Hawaii, although it is a collaborative initiative. So collaboration and partnerships are very important. So before we go into this, our purpose or our vision is to build a Hawaii and a framework that will create diverse, sustainable, and thriving economy that is globally recognized as a place for innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. So as a whole, a local purpose, but a global presence. And our mission is to empower every interested innovator, techie, and entrepreneur on Hawaii Island to use their collective intelligence, tools, and connections to do three things: ideate and build high growth, scalable tech startups. And this encompasses how you go about coming up with that idea, how you vet it and refine it to come up with a credible, actionable idea, and also have the skills and wherewithal to execute on that idea. The next is to create an engaged and trusted community that founders can rely upon. And you can't just, a single entrepreneur can't just do it on their own. You need mentors, you need cheerleaders and service providers, which we have a lot of here, and clients. And then the next is to enable tech startups to scale and succeed locally on a statewide and global stage. So there's a common misperception, sometimes here, but definitely abroad, that companies founded here can't scale here. But with technology, you can. And with a robust and sustainable community, you can make that happen. Your customers and employees are everywhere, not just here. So helping people figure out how to do that effectively. This next slide, we came up with some values that we call guiding principles. We are very cognizant that we are not Silicon Valley and we don't want to be. So we created these values to ensure that we are keeping at the front of mind the type of community that we want to be. It's not just about creating financially successful companies. It's about creating a future where we're respecting our diverse cultures, it's sustainable, and it's consistent with the spirit of aloha of our island. So the first is leading with kokua. It's not just a nice thing to do and consistent with how we want to be here. It's a common, and it's actually a very important concept in successful entrepreneurial communities. And it's already a value of our island. So I think that's a very important point. So it's doing things for others without expecting an immediate personal gain. The next is native intelligence. We have a wealth of knowledge here on our island, and at the same time, diversity is extremely important to innovation and entrepreneurship. And then the last is sustainability. It's, again, not just successful financially, businesses that are good for our future. So equitable opportunities, things that are respecting our environment, making sure that we are lifting all boats, not just certain segments of our population that may be easiest to reach. So you'll notice I've used technology startup, and that is intentional. We are using a very broad definition of technology that encompasses tech-enabled companies, companies that are leveraging science and engineering, but it's also narrow in that it doesn't encompass all small business. And that was actually a conscious choice. It's still pretty broad, and we want to make sure that it is inclusive in this sector. There are a ton of different verticals or industries that you can look at, some that are strong here and that are a focus, like ag tech, and other things like creative media, but there's a ton of other ones that really align with our guiding principles, like longevity, which is basically helping seniors age in place or age gracefully. And there are others like that I think are a great fit, but it's not just a great fit culturally. These are things that investors are looking at globally and could succeed globally, even if they're based here. So this is a lot, right? A lot to accomplish. And how are we going to do this that in a way that can set us up for success sustainably? I'm looking at this by combining people development and infrastructure development. This is something that doesn't happen often in parallel when creating a startup community, particularly in rural areas. I think it's extremely important because if you look at traditional efforts that go into creating a startup community, they often look at standing up a startup accelerator, which is like a boot camp, or a venture fund for investing in those companies. But if you don't help empower entrepreneurs, those infrastructure initiatives will not be successful. And so the people development piece is really crucial. And there are a lot of people working on this as well. And we are working to partner on these initiatives. And this is teaching technology, people in technology, entrepreneurial skills, but also teaching general public and students that going into the tech industry doesn't need to necessarily be in tech. There are tons of opportunities across operations and finance and marketing and admin. So it's a multiple pronged initiative. And we think by doing this, it creates a funnel where you're taking people who are learning and developing into potential entrepreneurs and supporting them all the way through the end to when they have a company that is ready to scale globally. And we really need to support people on that entire journey. There can't just be a piecemeal initiative. So before I go into a little bit more depth into how we're going to make this work, I just wanted to introduce the team. As you obviously know, Doug and Heather, but we have a really diverse group of people with different backgrounds and expertise across entrepreneurship, technology, science, education, and public service, and we're all really working together to push this forward. So this is the introduction of what this is. I'm going to pause just to make sure there are no questions or comments. I can't see the chat, so if there are, please do chime in. I'll take that as a no. So I want to go into a little bit more depth about why technology and startups. I know we are known for tons of small business. It's a strength of ours. And we don't necessarily have developed technology startup community. I mean, technology, science, engineering, these are strengths that we have, but not yet quite in the startup area. We are looking at this as a way to diversify our economy. The pandemic has shown us drastically why it's important to do so into different industries, not just technology, but it was a wake-up call. And I also think it's really important. Diversity is important to provide an equitable economy, so a place where people can access opportunities equitably rather than in very dominant industries. So the pandemic was clearly a challenge, but it does present an opportunity because we now have this global community that is very open to technology and virtual relationship building. And that's, even though it was leveraged, that technology before, it's now become acceptable that relationship building and connections can happen virtually. And so we can use that technology to our advantage to empower people to pursue ideas that they have and to create the infrastructure that will support them to scale and connect globally. We can also become a leader. I mean, we are a remote and rural region. People think that this is not, I mean, it's not easy to do, but it is possible. And by creating a framework for success, we could become a leader or a model for other remote locations like ours. Just a little bit deeper into technology. Technology jobs are supposed to grow exponentially over the next few years. The roles in technology are often higher paying, and they're a very good opportunity for young people, often not requiring like the long years of service that you might get in other industry settings. The pay median pay is actually 118% above all other occupations and 250% greater than hospitality. And the jobs in tech, as I said before, are not just for techies. There are lots of broad opportunities involved with connecting remotely with established technology companies as well as establishing our own here. And that's what the next point is about, is remote work is embraced by this community. It's, you know, it's not just accepted as a necessity now, it's something that is a positive development in this world. And if we can offer these types of opportunities for young people, it will reduce the chance that they will leave or have to leave if they would like to stay here. So Driving a successful community is very difficult. There are several key strategies that are really important to doing so. And while we can't use a cookie cutter approach in our island, I do think it's smart to look at models that have worked, and including in places with similar population numbers. So I looked at something called the Boulder Thesis when creating this vision, which was created by a guy named Brad Feld. And he is the co-founder of a company called Techstars, which started in Boulder, Colorado. I was exposed to this because I worked for Techstars, and it has proven successful in a number of locations. And I think the four concepts here are the cornerstones of building a community. Entrepreneurs must lead. It's a common thing that happens in failed communities where you have people that have never been or been around entrepreneurs starting something, but also trying to keep control and leading that forward. But really, it's a community-based bottom-up approach that works best in most places. The next thing is leaders have to commit long-term. It's not just someone coming in and saying, I want to do this. They have to be willing to be here, and they have to want to be here for a long time. They also have to be inclusive and engaging across lots of different segments of the community, not just entrepreneurs. It's not an exclusive group that only includes tech. I mean, it's a lot of people have to come together to make this happen, and we have to be accepting of everybody that wants to give back and who wants to make this work. There are plenty of pitfalls that can happen, and we are aware of them, and it's something that we need to keep monitoring, and we will learn as we go. The big one at the top is the Patriarch Problem. This can often happen when you have people with a lot of power that want to come in and control and lead and really not allow others to morph the initiative, which I think is really important, that things can evolve as they go. There's also a focus on venture funding, which is just investment for startups. There's a lot of people will say we can't do it because we don't have funding, but really when you build good companies, investment and customers will come. We covered entrepreneurs leading and inclusivity. It's not about who you are or labels, it's about what you do and the actions that you take. And then the last is just being territorial and defensive. I think that's an obvious one. We are a small place, and collaboration across islands with other states, with other countries is really important to getting us out there and being successful. So what does this look like? The first step that we're going to take is to establish a entrepreneurial network. And this is led by founders, and there actually are quite a few tech founders here. I actually didn't know that before I came in, but connecting them to start making meaningful relationships and getting this movement going. We also want to formalize the connection between residents, entrepreneurs, people on this island with the larger global network. That could be investors or employers or clients. So if you have a company, how do you even access clients outside of your geographic location? That's what this would do. We'd also like to expose more residents to the opportunities in tech and startups, create an achievable path to career development. Right now, young people feel like they need to leave to start their career to really access certain types of opportunities, especially in tech. But that's not the case anymore, because if we embrace remote work, we can leverage the relationships that many people have on this island to create a channel for people here to access jobs remotely on the mainland, internationally, without having to leave. The goals of this initiative, there's plenty of metrics. I won't go through every one, but our big goals are higher paying, stable jobs locally, a more diverse and resilient economy, and global recognition that Hawaiʻi Island is a place for experimentation and innovation. And that last one, I mean, they're all really important, but the last one is something we can make progress on now and quickly. We aren't just a tourist destination. We have a lot more to offer the world. We do have what it takes to make this happen. We have a ton of strengths that I think we all can recognize here, but a lot of people externally don't know. But there's also a lot of challenges that we will need to address as we grow. But despite all the challenges, the time really is now. I really feel strongly that we're at an inflection point. There are people here that want to create this tech community. The rise of remote work, while definitely a double-edged sword, as more residents come here, it's really complicating our economy. But at the same time, if we can tap into those people and leverage their connections, especially when it comes to remote work, that could be hugely beneficial to our residents here. We also understand that we need to diversify our economy and that we have a wealth of entrepreneurial people on this island that can make it happen. And then we're also, in terms of our values, we have a critical mass of people that are dedicated to sustainability and resilience efforts that are optimal for technology-driven innovation. So the point is we have what it takes. In terms of where we are now, as was mentioned, we are currently gathering feedback. We're basically in month one of our initiative. We really want this framework and vision to be something that people can get behind to make sure it's reasonable, but also inspiring. We have a couple of pilot projects that we're working through and brainstorming now, but most of those focus on college and graduate students who are residents here to help them move their own ideas forward or connect them remotely to employment while staying here. And so I know I've been talking for a little while, so I'll quickly take you through the timeline. We are in month one, and that's building our network and establishing a foundation. Month two will be raising money for pilot projects, which I mentioned are still in the works. And then the phase 3 will be to launch and increase our reach. And then 4, which I think is important here, is the pilots, once they're launched, they're meant to gather data. It's an experiment. So we would run them and measure the success or not success of them. And if they're not successful, go back to the drawing board and try again. So that's the end of my slide deck. In terms of what I'm hoping for is, like I mentioned earlier, is feedback. I'd love to understand if this is something that people think is reasonable, is something that, even iterated down the road is something that you can get behind or you see people being excited about. And also, if you know of any technology entrepreneurs or people in technology or anyone who might be interested, we'd love for you to share this with them, as we're trying to get as much feedback as we possibly can. So any questions? I know that was kind of fast, but if you have any questions about how we're doing this, or even just where my background or anything that would be helpful, please let me know.
Maria, this is Alan Okinaka. I need to tell you the same thing I did to Jackie Hoover, who spoke to the group a week or 2 weeks ago. And I noticed she's part of your group. You have really defined a nice book with empty pages. The pages don't have stories in it. The pages don't say what, technology is an application of basic science. But we use it as though it is some kind of a special tool or something. It's really a definition of how basic science is applied. And so people say high tech, low tech. It's actually tech is tech. But anyway, as far as the book goes, I think we need to get groups together to come up with ideas on what kind of businesses, products or services that can be put together. That's really what the key is. One of the ideas I gave Jackie was back office operations, where here we have a community of the community college and University of Hawaii with a lot of international students who speak different languages. And we can have a back office to front computer companies in the mainland to provide back office services to whoever needs it. That kind of thing can happen. Remote work is big. People are coming in. A friend of mine sold his house for 3 times what he asked for, just because it was a remote work person from the mainland with a lot of money that wanted to live in Hawaii to do things for the company in the mainland. So that's my input to your presentation. We need to create ideas on what kind of businesses can be created. All the words, phrases that you presented. I have experienced this, I've seen that over and over. Those are the things we want to do. But to do that, we need ideas on what kind of businesses can be created. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And you mentioned stories. One of the things I'm working on now is gathering stories, basically what has succeeded, also what has failed, because I think it's important to look at what is actually happening now, because there are quite a few successful entrepreneurs, and I think that would be helpful in directing our ideas. And I do agree, we need ideas. This is just a framework, and a framework's not going to do it on its own. And then the other thing, the focus on people. A lot of times the best ideas come up with somebody solving a problem or somebody who has a passion about something. And so what I'd love to do is not just create ideas from the top, right? The high level saying this is what's going to work. It's empowering people who are in it every day to come up with and or pursue those ideas. Because I think it's going to take individuals too that probably aren't on our radar right now.
This is Barbara Hastings. I wondered how this compares to two parts to this. I wonder how this compares to Blue Startup, which is based on Oahu, but is funded by Hank Rogers. It's from this island, and whether you talk to them at all, because they have years and years of experience of helping tech startups.
Yeah, so the comparison is that Blue Startup is an accelerator, and accelerators are like boot camps. They help tech entrepreneurs greatly accelerate, hence its name, and connect to customers and to investors. Extremely important and a huge part of any startup ecosystem. And so that would be a piece of this, right? So where I came from was actually running something like that, but in another part of our country. Why I started to lean towards a broader vision was a lot of the rural communities I've seen, they set up an accelerator, but then there's no entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs don't know how to get to that stage. So it's filling in the gaps of helping people get to something like that. And that is a piece of the puzzle. In terms of Hank Rogers, we do have one of our core team members that is, who has a relationship with him. So I'm trying to morph this vision into a place where we can start talking to people like him and really morph it. But I want to make sure that it's consistent with what community members want before we go to that next step, if that makes sense.
Hi, Maria. This is Dennis with HPM Building Supply. My comment would be, have you reached out to people like the small business development centers and those who help businesses start their business? Because I think one of the fundamentals is, how do we help those who want to be entrepreneurs start the process, right? How do I even build up the business plan? What are financial projections? How do I get my business registered in Hawaii? And the second part of that would be, how do these starting business people get funding to grow their business, right? It's one thing to create an environment for startups and entrepreneurs, but how do they get the investment and the financial background to scale up?
To your first question, yes, and full disclosure, you are my first group presentation. So the business development groups will hopefully be soon. We do have a core team member that is connecting us to them, because you're right, like that is the core. And I think where we would come in is if there's differences in starting a technology business, how we can offer different expertise as well. It's almost like a different tracks, because different types of businesses evolve and grow differently and take different skill sets. So again, this is more just collaboration input at this time. To your second point, it is a huge challenge. What I'm trying to figure out is how we can provide funding, whether it's individual investors, it's nonprofit, it's foundation, it's grant. Like, what is the right model where we can fund individuals to help start their idea? Because a big challenge is people might have a great idea, but you can't just afford to stop working at your normal job. I mean, it's very hard to make progress. Not only is it hard to do that, you can't, it's time consuming, but it's an emotional roller coaster being an entrepreneur with lots of ups and downs. So if we can find some kind of mechanism that would even fund someone to take some time out of their day or their week, or if it's a student, a summer, to build that idea alongside skills that you might learn in a business development type of structure or course. I mean, that would be the right combination. It's just the question of what is the organization and how does that funding work? Because at that early stage, it's not traditional venture funding. So it is a challenge.
Thank you.
Hey, Maria, thanks again for taking your time and sharing your thoughts with us. I'm Toby Taniguchi. I'm with the Hawaiʻi Island Chamber of Commerce and the Japanese Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Could you take me back a little bit to the common pitfalls of the startup community? There are a number of, and I like what I hear, with regards to ESG, with regards to, DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion. But going back to the common pitfall slide that you have, I think there was some concern about the inclusion of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but with regards to universities or larger businesses or government. Can you just, delineate that a little bit further for me? There are, for example, there is something going on in Ka'u called the Ka'u Dream that was, backed by the Hawaii Executive Collaborative or Conference, but it may not necessarily fall with your third bullet point. I just wanted to maybe get a little bit more clarity of what of the positioning, because if we talk about DEI, right, diversity, equity, inclusion, we got to include everybody, right? I mean, it would seem to me, right? And so, but if you just, clarify that for me a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe this is maybe not the best wording. So when I talk about leading, to be sustainable, I should say, in 10 years from now, who should be leading this community? Entrepreneurs that have been successful, aspiring entrepreneurs, people who can mentor up and coming. But right now, we don't have a formal network. And to get to that point, yes, we need, everyone should always be included, right? Across all backgrounds, all walks of life. This bullet is, and I clearly need to reword it, is more about where we're going rather than where we are. And so we are building a stakeholder network and community that includes all of the parties that are listed there, from government to universities to nonprofit foundations, investors, entrepreneurs, because it takes everybody getting on the same page and working forward together. Whereas where we're going to be successful, someone in the nonprofit sector or government sector or education sector that's never started a company is probably not going to be directing that community in the future. I don't know if that makes more sense. It's definitely not meant to be exclusive. It's more of the future of successful startup communities tend to be led by the entrepreneurs themselves, because we've all together built up the capacity to get there. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Maria, this is Alan again. I kind of take different approach from what you just said. I think the education system has a great responsibility to nurture and provide opportunities for our students to be constantly curious. So when they grow up, they're always curious, because that's really what drives everything. Regardless of what business a person goes into, curiosity is really the basic thing that drives people to do things, to find out how can I do this better? What if I did this? Who can I, that kind of thing. So anyway, another comment is, 37 years ago, I was introduced to the words brain drain, and I've hated it all this time because you are going against curiosity. You're telling a person, don't go anywhere, stay here. To me, it's kind of an incestuous thinking to keep a person here on the island when there's so many things to learn and so many things to experience out in the world. So I don't like the word brain drain. And I told it was actually a manager in my education and training department that brought up that term. And I told him never to use that term again. You're holding back a person from being what they could be and more by telling them, don't be curious about what's out beyond the horizon. Stay here and be happy. And you can't do that. You have to get out there.
Yeah, and I wonder if I agree. You can't right now stay here and learn a lot of these things. I do wonder how we can change that environment, because if you are a remote worker for a company in California, that company should be providing you with opportunities to learn and to expand and to travel. Right now, it's just not feasible. That's just not happening yet. But if we could use that concept to bring people back that want to come back, that have gone out and explored, and eventually give young people the chance, if they want to stay, to access those learning opportunities while still living here. Not trapping them, but giving them the option. But I agree, we don't have that right now. It's not possible. If you go up here to learn, you're probably going to have to leave.
And Maria, I think adding on to Alan's comments, is just brain drain is a bad term, but what brings people back, right?
Right.
That's the key. Is you can be curious and go to different places and learn, but what brings you back? And I think for your slides, if you're be presenting to more groups like us or to government officials, maybe provide some examples of successful startup communities so that we can, either research or learn more about those and how we can incorporate that into our mindset. That would be helpful as well.
That's a good idea. I will do that.
Maria, this is Kurt Sharp. What Alan said is I support in terms of that. One of my pet peeves for 20, 30 years has always been how the educational communities, organizations fit in and support the community requirements. I was involved with several programs in England and also the Middle East, where we as institutions became mentors, if you will. So we took a lot of the students that were looking for MS, MBA projects, et cetera. We brought them on board, and they helped us out, and we helped them out in terms of the mentorship. For example, in the supply chain business, which I was heavily involved with. So, the strategy I always saw was the community going to the university going to the community and saying, okay, over a 5 to 10, 15-year period, how many project managers are you going to need? How many people are involved with specific aspects of the technology are you going to need? Down to how many plumbers you need, how many electricians you need, et cetera. And then between the community and the educational entities, they'd form a set of curriculum that actually supported those students. They would advertise that. So they support the educational process in terms of providing these skill sets to the community. That was the first thing. The second thing is, in all these presentations, no one's mentioned the fact, a beneficial, positive fact, that we sit in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So we can actually become a profound service entity to both the continental United States and also Asia Pacific. So research and development is one of those. Customer service is another thing, expanding our educational facilities to accommodate Asia Pacific's requirements. So we need to go beyond our borders as well. Yeah, like you mentioned that. Thank you.
Completely agree. And I think that first comment you made is really interesting. It's almost like inventorying business leaders for what they believe they're going to need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aloha, Maria. I'm Kai'u Kimura. I'm with the Japanese Chamber, but also a member of Hawaiʻi Island Chamber. And I work at Imilo Astronomy Center at UH Hilo. Mahalo nui for your presentation. A lot of information, and I think struck a lot of chords, right? Like as a community, we've been struggling with a lot of the things that you bring up. One thing I just want to offer as kokua is, I think the word entrepreneur needs a bit of redefining.
Yeah.
Because I think for a lot of communities that equates to outside interest coming in and doing business in and through Hawaii through an outside perspective. So I think we have the opportunity to redefine that, because I know we all on this call understand the benefits, and not just the benefits, but the opportunities through that kind of a word entrepreneur, but redefining it is key for Hawaii's purpose, I think. Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, like as I look on the Zoom frame, there's a lot of entrepreneurs here that go back, that stem from generations ago, right? So I look at KTA ownership, I look at creative arts, I look at HPM, right? Even HICC, for that point, it's a Hawaii born and grown company. So I think, to Dennis's point earlier, I think it's important to frame up entrepreneurialism as not just something that we're looking to grow in Hawaii, but it has existed for generations, over 100 years. And I think it's important to honor and recognize those companies that are entrepreneurial in nature, that have created themselves because of the need that they saw in the community at that time, that thrive today. So I just wanted to put it in that context, because entrepreneurialism has a negative connotation, but it has also been, Hawaiʻi Island in particular has very strong roots in developing the entrepreneurial spirit. So how do we further cultivate that, I guess, is the question, in a local way? You had Native intelligence listed on one of your first slides. Native Hawaiian and Native local, I think, is important perspectives to define entrepreneurialism for Hawaii. So, but I just wanted to throw that in as mana'o kokua.
That's a good point.
Great feedback. Sorry.
That's okay. No, it's a great point, because it's almost like what I'm proposing here is almost just a different industry, but it can be built on the experience of all entrepreneurs that have come through, or not come through, who are here and who have built businesses. And it may be technology. Yeah, I mean, technology may be a different thing, but
technology is pervasive in all of our businesses, right? I mean, technology is sort of like I struggle sometimes with the word education, because it's so broad. But what we all do, whether we are in astronomy or we're in, business, right? Like technology is a part, just like education, it's a part of everything that we do. So tech really spans all sectors. Yeah. It's not its own, to me, it's not necessarily its own industry.
That's interesting for you.
Well, it's used in all sectors. Kalamai, I understand there are specific tech industries, but that too maybe is a word that needs better defining.
Well, it's a tool, and the outcome of that, the positiveness of the outcome of that is how you use that tool. That's how I look at technology. I'm still having a problem with Word 365 or whatever it is. But that I'm using that, and a lot of people are using it. So you're right. I think that's my opinion.
That's like what Alan said. Technology is technology, and it's everywhere.
And then
the point that Kai'u makes is let's apply it to Big Island candies, for instance. I had a fortunate opportunity to write up Alan Ikao for the Junior Achievement Board of Hall of Fame. So I got to learn a lot about his business. And he's a constant entrepreneur because he tries to incorporate new things into his business. So when he moved to that large building, he took the soft science of what people think going into the store. They can see through a window where everybody's putting those cookies together and dipping it and everything like that. It took me to the chocolate machine that mixes the chocolate to keep it at a certain temperature. So when it applies to it's dipped on, it will have the right amount of thickness when it's pulled out of the vat of chocolate. So when he went through a whole bunch of things, but when you think about it, you know, we need to constantly support people like in a business like that, because they do incorporate a lot of new technology into their businesses. And that's really, and if they do that, then that means a lot of other businesses can support that company. And so, yeah, Caillou, that's a very good point. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Do you have any other questions or comments for Maria? And also, Maria, is there anything that you would like the chamber to do after this in support of the work that you folks are doing?
Randy, this is Mary. Before we let Maria answer that question, I just want to tell you that I think you're incredibly brave to come before this group. And I really enjoyed your presentation and look forward to working with you in the community. I think I speak for many people here.
Thank you, Mary. And really what I said in the beginning, it's feedback. Like, I know I'm a new face and I know I don't know everything. I know I don't know a lot. And that's really what I'm looking for from groups like yours, because I can have all the entrepreneurship experience in the world, but it's the experience here that matters and it's going to make it work. So, I mean, it's not a complicated ask, but it is big because I know you all have lots going on. So I'm really looking for, like, who should I share this with? Who needs to have input? Who needs to have a say? Who will have ideas and who should be involved? Because that's a lot of what I don't know. So.
Go for it. Do it.
I'm also just going to drop my email in here in case anybody wants to reach out individually. I think you all have a link to the presentation, not the presentation I shared today, the working document. So please do go into it and comment anything. I know this is kind of like a soft ask. It's not a specific, very specific, but I mean, we're a work in progress and we're trying to figure out what's next and what can work and what won't.
Randy,
Maria.
Okay. Go ahead, Tom.
This is Tommy Goya. I have one comment that, you know, I question myself every day. You know, partly caused by the pandemic and the isolation of our young ones. You know, what can we do? How can we reach out to our young students and trying to get back on track so that they can dream and believe again? You know, many of them have gone sideways and not reaching out anymore. And it's really hard to connect with them to, you know, to dream and aspire again. So, and that's going to be a tough one for many years to come. But if we're talking about sustainability, we need to reach down to the youngest ones that will listen. So what Alan said was very important. You know, you got to be inquisitive at the very earliest age. You've got to have that thirst or hunger for learning. So thank you again.
Yeah, and it's a huge focus for us. So I see that Janice is on from Vibrant Hawaii. There's another group working on education and workforce, and we're working closely with them because we are well aware that education is not, well, we have some very experienced educators in our group, but in terms of me directing this forward, that's just not my area of expertise. And they're, I think, focusing right now on high school students, but that is one of the focus. It's like, how do we bring people up? How do we make them or help them believe that there are paths forward? And as a group, we're trying to figure out where we actually fit into that, because we're not going to duplicate what others are doing, but how can we add on in this respect for like, you can do something with this. And it could be that we're plugging into higher ed, or we're serving as a bridge from higher ed to the workforce, or from high school to higher ed. We just don't know enough yet, but it's definitely a focus for us.
Yeah, excuse me, and the last thing we want to do is silo the kids' thinking into what we think is good for them, rather than exploring themselves and their opportunities that avail to them.
I'm personally a big believer in not funneling people, because I feel like I'm a product of that. So
Thank you.
Yeah, Maria, this is Doug Adams. I think about this a lot, but of course I'm paid by the taxpayers to think about it a lot. So the thing I didn't see in there, and I'm sure I could have missed it, was any discussion of metrics, how you measure your outcomes, how you measure, what the successes would be as a part of these programs. And it would be helpful to see that, because we struggle with that anyway when we're taking a look at any of the innovation programs that we have responsibility for. What are the outcomes that are going to matter, and then how do you measure that? Because it's only through the measurement that you really are going to know whether or not you achieved something. At the same time, so I say that, and it's very quantitative, but at the same time, you just have to keep at it, right? Don't be dissuaded. I think that the comments here are helpful, because I think you're going to hear those in other places as well, and they are from places of concern about the kind of comments that you may receive from others. But the key here is to keep at it. Kids have inquisitive minds. They have a natural curiosity. The key is, how do we connect that with the ability later in life to earn a livelihood, something that is going to both be meaningful and allow for a quality of life that is based on a thriving economy here, right? So, yeah, keep at it. What you're doing is not necessarily going to be the silver bullet for this. It's going to take a lot of action. The economy itself needs to be diversified towards doing it. And so I applaud you as you are moving down this path.
Thank you. And that is the goal. It's sustainable, not just from sustainable quality of life. That is a goal. And I think I skipped the metrics. I felt like I was being a little long-winded. So I do have some. My challenge I'm having is that balance between qualitative and quantitative, because some quantitative metrics don't tell the story. So it's kind of it's a work in progress, and it might actually start by like what the pilot projects are and how we measure them, rather than this big massive thing as a whole at the moment. It could also be measuring engagement with the initiative stakeholders, things like signups, which is so trivial, but like it's a combination of a lot of different things, but we're still working through that too. And Doug, I know you've heard this once before. I did take note of your comment on broadband, and that is part of what we're trying to consider as well.
Alrighty, any last comments, any last question or recommendation, or anything for Maria that she can walk away with? Well, first off, I want to thank you, Maria. You did a really good job. I think the spirit of the work that you're doing is amazing. So please do not be discouraged by any comments. Just take it in and keep going. The work that you guys are doing is really amazing. So keep it up. Again, any last comments from anyone? Is all good? Okay, Maria. Thank you
I
so
probably
much.
talked too
Janice,
much already, Randy. Randy, one more comment from me. I know I said a whole bunch of I'm going to regret it later, but it's visioning. I can't help thinking about what I was a captured audience once on an airplane sitting next to our past mayor, Harry Kim, and he provided a vision for me. He said his vision is Hawaiʻi Island, a nice place to live. And it's very simple, but then I realized that by thinking of it that way, you rally a whole bunch of businesses to make Big Island a nice place to live. It doesn't matter what it is, what business, whether it's a basic banking system or the state system or whatever. Everybody focuses on making Hawaiʻi Island a nice place to live. And so when I saw your vision, I was thinking that I wish it was something like that. Hawaiʻi Island, a nice place to live. And then you can rally a whole bunch of businesses to support that. Thank you. I promise not to say more.
Thank you. And more comments are always welcome. So, and thank you all so much for taking an hour out of your days.
Thanks, everybody. So on behalf of the chambers, thank you, Maria. Thank you, Janice, and everybody for attending. You guys all have a great day.
Hello.
Take care, guys.